Part 1. Introduction. The Power of Human Relationships. Imagine for a moment everything you could achieve if you had the ability to connect deeply with any person you meet. If you knew how to make someone listen to you attentively, value your opinion, and trust you, even in the very first conversation. That ability is not a gift you are born with. It is a skill that is developed, trained, and mastered. And it is, without exaggeration, one of the most powerful abilities any human being can possess. Most people spend their entire lives trying to improve their external circumstances, earning more money, finding a better job, acquiring new technical skills, being more productive. But few stop to think that behind every opportunity, every business, every important relationship, there is something more fundamental and decisive: how they relate to others. What you are about to discover here is not just a collection of social tips. It is a deep reconfiguration of how you think, speak, listen, and act toward others. Because if you master the art of winning friends and influencing people, you will have unlocked the true engine of opportunity. We live in an era where, paradoxically, we are more connected and more isolated than ever. Social media allows us to talk to hundreds of people a day, but rarely do we have a truly meaningful conversation. We can send messages, react to posts, and stay constantly in touch. But when was the last time you felt someone genuinely listen to you? And when was the last time you listened to someone without just waiting for your turn to speak? What Dale Carnegie taught decades ago, and what is more urgent today than ever before, is that the essence of leadership, influence, and genuine connection is not about impressing, but about understanding. It is not about speaking louder, but about listening intently. It is not about showing what you know, but about genuinely caring about what the other person feels, thinks, and needs. People do not change because of data. They change when someone touches them emotionally. And that only happens when social intelligence, empathy, and real presence are developed. Perhaps no one ever taught you this in school, but social skills are responsible for much of the success or failure in life. You may have the best product in the world, but if you don't know how to present it, no one will buy it. You may have the best intentions in a relationship, but if you don't know how to communicate, the bond will break. You may have talent, vision, and willpower, but if you don't know how to relate to others, your achievements will be limited to what you can do alone. And that has a limit. On the other hand, when you develop the ability to win allies, to inspire trust, to generate respect without imposing it, your influence multiplies. You no longer walk alone. You lead. You no longer persuade with pressure. You convince through understanding. You no longer ask. You attract. That is what turns an ordinary person into someone truly extraordinary. The vast majority of people believe influence is manipulation, that winning friends means pleasing everyone, that being heard depends on shouting louder. But the truth is that real influence is born from mutual respect, from giving value before receiving, from genuine interest in others. And that is what you are going to learn here. This audiobook is not designed to entertain you. It is designed to equip you. To give you principles that have been tested by millions of people in every corner of the world. People who, like you, wanted to improve their relationships, grow as leaders, communicate more clearly, connect with their clients, rebuild lost bonds, or simply stop feeling ignored. And they succeeded, not because they pretended to be someone they were not, but because they learned to apply human truths that were always there, yet no one had ever taught them. From now on, each chapter will give you a concrete tool. Not theory, but action. Not empty inspiration, but strategies that work. You will learn why criticizing others drives them away, even when you are right. You will discover how a well-placed compliment can open doors that neither logic nor force can push open. You will understand why most people are not seeking truth but validation, and how they can help you communicate better, negotiate more effectively, and resolve conflicts without destructive confrontations. You will learn to listen. Really listen. To listen, not to respond, but to understand. Because when someone feels heard, they feel valued. And when someone feels valued, they trust. And when they trust, they allow themselves to be guided. There is a silent transformation that happens when you master these skills. You stop needing the approval of others because you know how to build respect. You stop avoiding conflicts because you know how to handle them with emotional intelligence. You stop feeling invisible because you understand how to create presence without raising your voice. And that translates into better personal relationships, more professional opportunities, more humane leadership, and more stable self-esteem. Because the way you relate to others also determines how you relate to yourself. You cannot expect others to listen to you if you do not know how to listen. You cannot expect others to respect you if you do not know how to offer respect without submission. You cannot demand understanding if you do not know how to offer it first. Everything you give comes back. And everything you sow in your relationships ends up multiplying. This path is not for those looking for shortcuts. It is for those who understand that mastery of relationships is an art built day by day, in every word, in every silence, in every gesture. There are no scripts or magic formulas. There are principles that transform when practiced consistently. What I propose is that you don't listen to this audiobook as just another piece of content, but as a practical guide. Take notes, reflect, apply, test, and repeat. See your relationships as a laboratory where you can fine-tune your social skills, where every conversation is an opportunity to train your empathy, your listening, your presence, your influence. Because the more you work on this, the more doors will open. More people will want to collaborate with you. More respect you will attract without having to ask for it. And more impact you will have in every space where you are present. This is the beginning of a new way of relating to others. No more fear of rejection. No more anxiety to please. No more need to be right. From now on, everything you learn here will lead you to influence with elegance, communicate with clarity, connect with power, and above all, build relationships that are never forgotten. Because when you apply the right principles with sincerity and consistency, you don't just win friends. You become unforgettable. But before we continue, write in the comments which city you are listening from, and if this message is resonating with you, subscribe to the channel now. This way, you make sure you don't miss any content that nurtures your mind and brings you closer every day to the life you truly deserve. There is no time to lose. Now let's continue. Part 2. Rule number 1. Never criticize, condemn, or complain. Criticism may feel natural. In fact, most people do it without even noticing. We criticize others for how they behave, how they speak, the decisions they make, what they don't do, even how they think. However, what is rarely considered is the real effect that criticism produces. It doesn't transform. It doesn't inspire. It doesn't correct. In most cases, what it produces is resistance, resentment, and disconnection. Criticism does not invite change. It triggers defense. And when someone feels attacked, they do not listen. They protect themselves. They shut down. They justify themselves. From that moment on, any attempt to influence or guide loses its power. That is why, if you truly want to improve your relationships, to become persuasive, influential, and respected, you must completely eliminate the habit of criticizing, condemning, or complaining. Because every time you do it, you are undermining trust, destroying bridges, and sabotaging your ability to generate real impact. Throughout history, the wisest leaders have understood this principle. Abraham Lincoln, for example, was famous for his self-control and refusal to engage in destructive criticism. In his early years as a politician, he used to write letters full of outrage against those who attacked him or made mistakes. But over time, he stopped sending them. He learned that criticism only generates opposition and that it is far more effective to influence through example and understanding. On one occasion, after one of his generals made a serious mistake during the Civil War, Lincoln wrote an angry letter. But he never sent it. Years later, that letter was found among his personal belongings as a reminder that withholding criticism had been one of his wisest decisions. He understood that if he wanted to lead others, he first had to master his own emotions. True leadership does not impose or condemn. It understands, and from there it transforms. In everyday life, the same thing happens. Think about a recent situation where someone criticized you. How did you feel? Did you open yourself to change or shut down? Did you reflect calmly or defend yourself? Most likely, you felt the need to protect your ego, justify your actions, and avoid feeling diminished. Now think about the effect you create when you criticize others. You may believe you are correcting, helping, or being honest. But in reality, you are touching the other person's most sensitive nerve, their need to feel valid. Even when the criticism is true, its delivery is often so harsh that it closes every door to learning. This is not about ignoring mistakes or being complacent with what is wrong. It is about choosing a wiser, more constructive, more human approach. The solution is not to repress what you think, but to change your approach. Instead of criticizing, observe. Instead of condemning, understand. Instead of complaining, take action or accept. Criticism comes from the ego. I know more, I am right, I would never do that. But understanding comes from empathy. Maybe I don't know everything they're going through. Perhaps they acted this way because they saw no other way out. Maybe I have made similar mistakes too. When you develop the ability to look without judgment, your influence rises. Because the other person no longer feels attacked, they feel seen. And that opens a possibility for transformation far deeper than any lecture. People don't change because they are pointed out. They change when they feel there is a better alternative, and that alternative is best presented through example rather than criticism. Replacing criticism with influence begins with a simple principle. Don't react, respond. When something displeases you, don't react immediately with harsh words or disapproving gestures. Breathe. Listen. Understand what lies behind the other person's behavior. Maybe that person is acting out of fear, insecurity, or ignorance. If you react with judgment, you are only feeding that same vicious cycle. But if you respond with clarity, respect, and empathy, you can break the pattern. You can create a pause that invites reflection. You can turn a moment of tension into an opportunity to grow together. That is true influence. It's not about imposing your point of view, but elevating the conversation to a level where both can learn. Applying observation without judgment is an art developed through practice. It means seeing facts without adding an emotional label. It's not the same to say, you're irresponsible for being late, as to say, you arrived 30 minutes later than agreed, what happened? In the first case, you are judging the person. In the second, you are pointing out the fact. The first creates guilt and defensiveness. The second creates reflection and openness. This technique can completely change the way you communicate with your children, your partner, your coworkers, or your clients. Because it conveys respect, and respect is the foundation of every lasting relationship. Moreover, it makes you emotionally mature. You don't react impulsively. You act consciously. And that alone can take you much further than any logical argument or verbal attack. This is not about staying silent when something is wrong. It is about learning to express it in a way that does not close the other person off, but instead encourages them to listen. It is not hiding the truth. It is knowing how to deliver it in a way that transforms rather than hurts. This requires intention, patience, and training, but the results are extraordinary. Imagine that every time someone around you makes a mistake, instead of criticizing them, you help them see it for themselves. Imagine your words creating not fear, but trust. Your presence bringing not discomfort, but inspiration. That is the kind of influence that changes lives. Not from imposed authority, but from authority earned through respect. Every time you feel the urge to criticize, ask yourself, will this help the other person grow, or will it only make me feel superior? Am I speaking from ego or from empathy? Am I correcting with love, or just unloading my frustration? Those questions give you back your power. They allow you to be aware of the impact you have on others. And they give you the opportunity to choose a response that builds instead of destroys. Because in the end, the relationships we value most are those where we feel safe, accepted, and guided, not those where we were judged, attacked, or belittled. The world is full of people who criticize, condemn, and complain every day. But very few develop the ability to understand, to influence with respect, to lead from empathy. You can be one of them. And when you are, you will see how your environment changes. People will want to be near you, to listen to you, to follow you. Not out of obligation, but admiration. Because they will notice you are different. That you speak with purpose. That you correct without hurting. That you guide without imposing. And that, beyond any technical talent or visible achievement, is what will truly make you stand out in any area of life. This is how the power to influence people begins, without ever needing to criticize them. Part 3, Rule number 2. Show honest and sincere appreciation. Nothing creates a faster and deeper bond between two people than genuine recognition. In a world where criticism is free and indifference seems normal, a simple gesture of appreciation can be an invaluable gift. But not just any appreciation, not empty words or forced compliments, but an expression that is sincere, honest, and focused on something real. Human beings have an emotional need as strong as breathing, to feel valued. And that need exists in everyone, from the shyest child to the most confident executive. Yet, what is striking is that most people rarely feel truly appreciated. They feel measured, judged, pressured, but rarely do they genuinely hear that someone recognizes their effort, their intention, or their essence. That is why, when someone takes the time to notice the good, highlight it, and express it sincerely, it produces an impact that transforms the energy of the relationship. That is the difference between flattery and appreciation. Flattery is a form of manipulation. It is a superficial, exaggerated compliment designed to get something in return. And people, even if they don't say it, can feel it. They might smile at the moment, but deep down, they feel uncomfortable or distrustful. Genuine appreciation, on the other hand, comes from real observation. It expects nothing, it forces nothing. It simply recognizes something that deserves to be highlighted. It could be a detail, the way someone solved a problem, the effort they put into something small, the positive attitude in the face of difficulty, or their courtesy in an uncomfortable situation. These are moments that go unnoticed by many, but when recognized, they become unforgettable. When you learn to see the good in others and communicate it honestly, you become a different kind of presence. Not just another person, but one who inspires, uplifts, and leaves a lasting impression. To detect the good in others, you have to change your focus. You must stop looking at what is missing, what was not done, what went wrong, and start intentionally observing what is being contributed. This does not mean ignoring mistakes, but choosing consciously to focus your energy on what can be strengthened. People grow more when they feel seen for what they do well than when they are beaten down for what they do wrong. That is the essence of positive reinforcement. When you sincerely praise someone for something specific, you are planting a powerful seed. That person not only feels validated but also unconsciously wants to repeat that behavior because it created a pleasant feeling. Properly used praise is not just an act of kindness. It is a silent leadership strategy. It is a way of guiding, of building habits, of influencing without imposing. And the more specific the praise, the more powerful its effect. For example, it is not the same to say, "Good job," as to say, "I was impressed by how you resolved the conflict without raising your voice. That calmness of yours made all the difference." The first is generic and can sound automatic. The second is clear, personalized, and shows that you paid attention. And that makes all the difference. Because we all long to be seen, not for the obvious, but for what few notice. When you praise in detail, you show that you are not just present but that you truly value the person. And that makes you someone who adds value, who elevates. A person who knows how to see value in others inevitably becomes someone valuable to others. Because not everyone knows how to do it, and even fewer do it without expecting something in return. Applying this strategy subtly but consistently can completely change the atmosphere of any environment. A work team that receives sincere praise becomes more productive and loyal. A family where small efforts are recognized grows stronger in trust. A couple who knows how to see and express each other's value deepens their relationship. Everything changes when appreciation is practiced intentionally. And the best part is that it requires no extra time or extraordinary resources. It only requires awareness, presence, and a willingness to look beyond the surface. It requires pausing for a moment to stop automatic judgment, to stop the impulse to correct, and to replace it with a habit of recognizing. Because recognition builds bridges where judgment builds walls. One of the most revealing cases of this principle was experienced by a businessman who had constant conflicts with his team. He was frustrated because he felt people were not committed, that they did the bare minimum, and that they lacked passion for their work. During a training session, he was asked to stop criticizing for 1 week and instead identify and express at least one positive action each day, specifically and sincerely. At first, it seemed absurd to him, but he decided to try it. On the first day, he praised an employee for punctuality and organization. On the second day, he praised another for handling a difficult client well. On the third day, he acknowledged the collaborative attitude of someone who usually went unnoticed. By the end of the week, something had changed. The environment felt different. People began smiling more, asking how to improve, suggesting ideas. What happened? Sincere appreciation had created an emotionally validating environment where everyone felt their effort mattered. No salary increase or motivational meeting was needed. Just appreciation, well expressed, at the right moment. Another case involved a mother and her teenage daughter. The relationship had become tense and distant. Everything was complaints, arguments, and awkward silences. The mother, understanding this principle, decided to do something different. Instead of pointing out every mistake, she began recognizing small positive actions. When her daughter woke up on time, when she helped without being asked, when she showed courtesy. These were not big gestures, but they were acknowledged sincerely. Before long, the relationship began to soften. The previously hostile daughter started opening up, sharing, and seeking conversation. It wasn't magic. It was appreciation. And appreciation has that power. It softens tension, opens what is closed, and repairs what is broken. When you practice this habitually, you develop a skill few possess, the ability to influence from respect and genuine admiration. You become someone with emotional authority. You don't impose respect. You inspire it. You don't demand recognition. You generate it. And that sets you apart in any context. People trust more in those who value them, follow more those who make them feel important, and work better with those who recognize them. That is the true lever of lasting influence. And it is available to everyone, as long as it is practiced with integrity. Never underestimate the power of a sincere phrase. A simple, "I admire how you handled that situation," can lift someone who was about to give up. A "thank you for always being there when needed," can heal an old wound. A "I value your effort, even if I don't always say it," can rewrite an entire relationship. Because what heals, what unites, what transforms, is not perfection, it is appreciation. And appreciation begins when you stop only seeing mistakes and start noticing achievements, no matter how small. This principle will not only make you a more influential person, it will make you more human, more aware, and more connected. And in a world that rushes without looking, judges without understanding, and demands without recognizing, that is an act of true leadership. Learning to show honest and sincere appreciation is not a trick to be liked. It is a way of life. A daily decision to see with wiser eyes, to speak with words that add value, and to live with a presence that leaves an imprint. Because in the end, we all remember those who made us feel valued. And you can be one of those people. Part 4, Rule number 3, Arouse in others an eager want. People don't do things because you want them to. They do them because they themselves want to. That is one of the most powerful and, at the same time, most forgotten truths when it comes to influencing others. Every human being is driven by an inner desire, by something they deeply yearn for, and the key to gaining their cooperation, their interest, or even their affection is to awaken that desire within them. It's not enough to be right or to offer logical arguments. What truly drives action is a personal, internal need, not one imposed from outside. When you manage to align what you are proposing with what the other person already wants, resistance disappears and is replaced by genuine cooperation. The first step to arousing an eager want in someone else is to observe them carefully and listen actively. In their words, in their tone of voice, in what they emphasize or avoid, you can find clues to their inner motivations. Most people are so focused on themselves that they forget to do this, but anyone who masters this principle learns how to connect on a deeper level. This is not about manipulating or deceiving. It's about understanding that every person carries within them a story, an emotional need, a goal, a fear, or an ambition that guides many of their decisions. When you talk to someone, you can present your ideas in a way that resonates with what's already inside them. If you're selling a product, don't focus on the technical features. Talk about what the product can do for the customer's life. If you're leading a team, don't just demand results. Connect those objectives to the personal dreams of the people who follow you. In a romantic relationship, don't criticize what you aren't receiving. Instead, express what both of you can build together by focusing on what you both desire. An eager want isn't imposed, it's evoked. And that evocation happens when you stop speaking from your perspective and begin speaking from theirs. The most powerful technique here is learning to ask desire-oriented questions. Questions like, what do you really want to achieve? Or, what do you value most about this? Or, how would you like to feel in this situation? When you ask these kinds of questions, you not only obtain valuable information, but you also awaken in the other person the very desire to act. Because by verbalizing it, they feel it as something closer and more possible. Then you can present your idea, proposal, or point of view as a path to help them achieve what they already deeply want. This is where the magic happens. They no longer listen to you with resistance but with openness, because you are talking about them, not about yourself. This is one of the highest forms of persuasion. Showing others how what you propose brings them closer to what they most desire. In the world of sales, this rule is fundamental. The best salespeople aren't those who talk the most. They are those who listen the best. They detect what hurts the client, what excites them, what worries them, and they present their solution framed within those desires. If you sell a house, you're not selling bricks. You're selling a family's safety, emotional stability, the idea of a home for creating memories. If you sell a book, you're not selling pages. You're selling a personal transformation, an emotional experience, a tool for empowerment. If you sell your services, don't just talk about yourself. Talk about the result that the other person can achieve thanks to you. In leadership, awakening desire in others is the foundation of lasting motivation. You can make people do things out of fear, obligation, or pressure, but that only creates resentment, low productivity, and zero loyalty. In contrast, when people feel they are chasing something they care about, something meaningful to them, the energy with which they act multiplies. A smart leader doesn't command. They inspire. They don't control. They connect. Instead of saying, "I need you to do this," they say, "How do you think this could help you achieve your goals within the team?" And that's where the change happens. The person is no longer just obeying. They are participating. They aren't just complying. They are contributing. That difference changes everything. In personal life, awakening an eager want is the key to healthy relationships. No one likes to feel forced, manipulated, or conditioned. But everyone responds positively when they feel you see and value what they truly want. In an intimate conversation, a family negotiation, or an everyday conflict, the best thing you can do is ask yourself, what does this person really want? And if you can connect your response, your proposal, or even your disagreement to that inner motivation, the relationship improves instead of deteriorating. People don't walk away because you disagree with them. They walk away when they feel you don't understand them. This principle also transforms how you communicate. Instead of imposing your point of view, you start framing your ideas within what the other person values. If you want to convince someone to adopt a new habit, don't say, "This is the right thing to do." Say, "This will bring you closer to what you really want." If you want to change someone's opinion, don't attack their position. Connect your message with something that already matters to them. That is the most effective way to influence. Helping others see how what you propose directly benefits them. Because, deep down, every person acts according to their interests, desires, and emotions. When you manage to align those desires with your message, it becomes impossible to ignore you. This is not a trick or a secret formula. It's a way of seeing communication as an opportunity to serve the other person, not to impose yourself. To resonate with their inner world, not to push your own agenda. And that, paradoxically, is what gives you the most power. Because whoever understands and respects the desires of others earns their attention, respect, and commitment. Awakening an eager want in others is an art, and like any art, it requires practice, empathy, and focus. But when you master it, you become a person with true power to influence. Not by imposing, but by inspiring. Part 5. Secret of Influence. Take a genuine interest in others. When you take a genuine interest in others, something changes in the dynamic of any relationship. This is not about manipulating or using cold techniques to be liked. It's about an internal shift, a mindset that naturally builds trust. Most people are too focused on themselves, on their problems, their interests, on what they are going to say or gain. That's why when someone genuinely shows interest in another person, they instantly become memorable, someone it feels good to talk to. This principle, though simple, is profoundly powerful. If you want to influence, you must first connect. And to connect, you must see the other person as valuable simply because they are human. True influence doesn't come from forcing your point of view, but from creating a space where the other person feels seen, heard, and understood. Genuine interest has a non-verbal language that is impossible to fake. Micro-expressions, tone of voice, the attention you give when someone speaks to you, all communicate whether you are truly present or just pretending. And people notice. That's why if you want others to value you, start by valuing them first. Listen with your whole being. Ask questions that go beyond the superficial, questions that invite the other person to open up. Remember the important details they share with you. In doing so, you're telling the other person, you matter, and that's one of the most powerful messages a human being can receive, without even needing to be said outright. Trust is built brick by brick, and every act of sincere interest is another brick laid. When you truly connect with another human being through empathy, you no longer need elaborate speeches to influence. All it takes is understanding what matters to that person and aligning with it from a genuine intention. Many people try to become leaders by forcing ideas or demanding obedience. But true leadership, the kind that leaves a mark, is born from the ability to step into another's shoes, to feel what they feel, to understand without judgment. Authentic empathy is more persuasive than 1,000 arguments. Because when someone feels understood, they automatically lower their defenses and open up. Influencing is not about controlling. It's about understanding. It's about accompanying. It's about being relevant in someone else's life, not through force, but through connection. Even with difficult people, this strategy works. The people who cause the most conflict are often those who most need to feel seen. Hostility is not always personal. Often, it's a reflection of an unmet emotional need. If you can look beyond behavior and focus on what that person truly needs, recognition, security, to be heard, respect, you can completely transform the tone of the interaction. You won't always get them to change, but you can prevent the relationship from turning toxic. Sometimes, all it takes is asking a different question, one that shows sincere curiosity. What made you think that? Or, I'd really like to understand how you see it. These types of questions open emotional doors that the ego usually keeps tightly shut. Charisma is not a talent reserved for a select few. It's the direct result of genuine human interest. Charismatic people are not necessarily the most eloquent. They are the ones who make others feel good when they are around them. And that comes from their ability to focus on the other person. It's not about being outgoing, funny, or having a big personality. It's about radiating a presence that says, I am here with you in this moment, and what you have to say matters to me. This attitude creates a magnetic attraction because everyone, without exception, wants to feel valued. And when someone does it without expecting anything in return, simply because they care, we naturally feel connected. Genuine human interest is more persuasive than any technique. In a conversation, the person who has the most impact is not the one who talks the most but the one who listens the best. In a negotiation, the winner is the one who most deeply understands the other person's needs. In a meeting, the one who shines is the one who sincerely recognizes the achievements of others. These are not technical skills. They are conscious decisions of presence and empathy. And they can be trained. It's enough to start observing. Ask yourself every time you speak to someone, what really matters to this person? How can I make this interaction a gift, not a burden? Am I listening to respond, or am I listening to understand? People remember how you made them feel far more than the words you said. This is the silent key to all lasting influence. Being kind, showing attention, valuing the efforts of others, recognizing small details, remembering names, congratulating achievements, caring about what hurts them. All of this costs nothing, yet it creates immeasurable human wealth. And if you make this a habit, your presence will be transformative. Everywhere you go, you will leave a mark. Because human beings don't want to be convinced, they want to be understood. And when you choose to be the one who understands, you automatically become someone influential, memorable, respected, and, above all, valuable. If you truly want to win friends and influence people, start by genuinely taking an interest in them. Not to get something in return, but because you understand that the greatest value you can offer another human being is your full attention. And in a world full of distractions and self-interest, that is a revolutionary act. Part 6. Make the other person feel important, and do it sincerely. Every human being, without exception, carries deep within them a silent yet constant need to feel important. This is not superficial vanity, but a fundamental psychological need. Whoever succeeds in fulfilling it for others gains not only their goodwill but also their respect and loyalty. Making someone feel important is not about empty flattery or subtle manipulation. It is a sincere act of human recognition, a connection born from authentic respect and genuine empathy. People remember more how you made them feel than what you said or did. That's why, when you make someone feel heard, seen, and understood, you are laying a powerful foundation for any meaningful relationship, whether personal or professional. The key to achieving this is giving complete and authentic attention. It's not enough to hear. You must truly listen. Listen with your eyes, with your body, with your full presence. When someone speaks to us and feels that we are truly present, without interrupting, without planning our next response, without judging, an invisible channel of deep connection opens. At that moment, we stop being just another conversational partner and become someone special. Making someone feel important means validating their existence, their story, their pain, and their joy. It means taking an interest in what they are passionate about, remembering small details they shared, and showing them that their presence does not go unnoticed. It is in those subtle gestures, not in grand speeches, that strong and lasting bonds are built. For this practice to have real impact, it must come from sincerity. If interest is fake, sooner or later it shows. People may not grasp complex logic, but they detect emotional falseness with surprising accuracy. That's why everything begins with mindset. When you genuinely care about others, not for what they can give you, but for who they are, your attitude changes. You see differently. You speak with a different energy. And that authenticity is magnetic. People are naturally drawn to those who make them feel that they matter. It is a silent yet immense power. A powerful tool to make someone feel important is sincere praise. Not exaggerated flattery or self-interested compliments, but a specific, genuine acknowledgement of qualities, efforts, or achievements. When you highlight something the other person may not have even noticed about themselves, you are doing more than just making a comment. You are lifting their self-esteem. And when someone feels better about themselves in your presence, they inevitably associate that positive emotion with you. That is why you should never underestimate the impact of a kind word, a gesture of recognition, a look that says, "I see you, I value you, you matter." It is also essential to learn to listen without trying to steal the spotlight. In many conversations, especially in competitive or social settings, there is a tendency to turn dialogue into a battle of egos. Who has the best story, the wittiest comment, the most interesting experience? This silent competition for attention sabotages connection. The secret is to hold back that impulse. Instead of responding with, "That happened to me too," or "That's nothing, listen to this," you can go deeper with, "How did that make you feel?" or "Tell me more about that." These phrases show genuine interest and return the focus to the other person, which is deeply comforting. Building mutual respect is born from this conscious exchange, where no one tries to dominate or outshine the other. When you make someone feel important without seeking recognition in return, you create a relationship based on emotional generosity. These types of bonds, though not always loud or visible, have a depth that withstands time, conflict, and distance. Moreover, by practicing this skill, you don't just benefit others, you transform yourself. Your empathy sharpens, your presence strengthens, and your leadership ability grows. Because a true leader is not one who demands respect but one who inspires it, and nothing inspires more than the art of making others feel important, with humility, presence, and sincerity. This principle becomes a compass in any context. In a negotiation, in a couple's argument, in a work meeting, or in a casual chat. When you make the other person feel important, without competing, without stealing the spotlight, without using the conversation as your personal stage, you create an atmosphere of cooperation and openness. And in that atmosphere, ideas flow more easily, agreements are reached with less friction, and relationships grow stronger. Finally, making others feel important is also a way to break invisible barriers. We all, to some extent, carry insecurities. But when someone looks at us with appreciation, treats us with respect, and recognizes us sincerely, something inside us relaxes. And it is there, in that more open emotional space, where true influence takes root. Because there is no persuasion strategy more effective than the honest act of valuing someone else, without conditions, without a hidden agenda, simply for who they are. That gesture transforms relationships and, by extension, transforms life itself. Part 7. Master the art of active listening. Active listening is not simply about staying silent while the other person speaks. It is a powerful way to demonstrate respect, interest, and genuine connection. People who master the art of listening not only understand others better but also become more attractive, more influential, and more memorable. Active listening is one of the most underrated tools in the world of human relationships, and yet, it is one of the most effective. When a person feels truly heard, they let their guard down. They feel they can trust you. They feel they matter. And in a noisy society where everyone wants to talk, that is almost magical. To develop this skill, you must shift your mindset from "I'm going to respond" to "I'm going to understand." The most common mistake when listening is doing it with the intent to reply. We think about what we are going to say while the other person is still speaking. That breaks the flow of connection. A true listener silences their inner noise and focuses all their attention on the speaker. They pay attention to words, but also to tone, gestures, and pauses. They listen beyond what is being said. They listen to what is meant. That type of listening has impact, creating deep influence without needing to impose anything. A key strategy to help people open up to you is asking open-ended questions. Not the ones answered with a simple yes or no, but the ones that invite reflection, sharing, and exploration. Questions like, how did that make you feel? What impacted you the most? What did you learn from that experience? Unlock conversation and make the other person feel that you truly care about their perspective. These questions must be accompanied by receptive body language, an open posture, soft eye contact, and a friendly facial expression. All of this communicates, without words, that you are there, that you're not judging, that you're simply present. Remembering key details and using them later can be a powerful tool for connection. When you remember that someone told you their daughter's name is Sophia or that they were nervous about an interview and you bring it up later, that person feels deeply valued. They feel it wasn't just a superficial chat. This type of emotional memory builds strong bonds, even with people you barely know. To remember these details, an effective habit is to repeat them to yourself after hearing them or write them down if necessary. When someone realizes you remember what they shared, you are sending the message, I listened to you, and you matter. Active listening also has the power to change the energy of any environment. In a tense meeting, a family argument, or a difficult conversation, listening with calm and empathy disarms conflict. It doesn't mean you agree, but it does mean you're willing to understand. And that is far more powerful than imposing your opinion. Furthermore, when you listen to others attentively, they are more willing to listen to you. It's an act of reciprocity that generates influence naturally, without manipulation. Being a great listener also allows you to better understand people's true needs, fears, and desires. And with that understanding, you can connect more effectively, lead with more empathy, and offer solutions that truly address what others value. Listening sparks respect, humility, and connection. And in a world saturated with empty words, that makes you truly irresistible. Because real charisma is not about talking a lot, but knowing when to stay silent in order to understand more. And that art, when mastered, transforms relationships, businesses, and lives. Part 8. Avoid arguments and show respect for the opinions of others. When you genuinely take an interest in others, you gain access to an invisible yet deeply transformative power. The ability to influence through empathy. People may resist your ideas, your proposals, or your advice, but they will never resist being genuinely understood. This principle, simple yet powerful, is one of the most effective keys to human influence. We live in a world where everyone wants to talk, but few are willing to truly listen. That is precisely why those who choose to authentically care about others become exceptional. This kind of interest is not faked, nor simulated with empty phrases or false compliments. It is shown through presence, attention, and the sincere desire to understand someone beyond the surface. And when you do that, the connection created is immediate. Because all of us, without exception, are seeking to be seen, heard, and valued. Trust is not built with speeches. It is built through genuine acts of interest. Asking about someone, remembering what they told you in a previous conversation, noticing when something is bothering them, or sincerely celebrating their achievements are gestures that speak far louder than 1,000 words. These details often go unnoticed when we are focused on ourselves, but when you truly become curious about others, you begin to see what you previously overlooked. And at that point, your influence becomes magnetic. Not because you manipulate, but because the other person feels you care. And when someone feels that you genuinely care about them, they naturally start to open up, to trust, to follow your lead. In that moment, you are no longer a stranger imposing yourself. You are a companion. And that changes everything. Authentic empathy is a leadership tool that very few people master. It is not about sympathizing or saying, "me too," but about emotionally stepping into the other person's shoes, understanding their fears, their desires, their wounds, and their motivations. Not to judge, but to connect. A true leader does not speak from above, they speak from beside. They do not impose, they inspire. They do not push, they guide. And they do so because they know how to read the soul of people. This can only be achieved when you are interested in what they feel, not just in what they say. Because often what a person expresses with words is only the surface. But if you listen with empathy, you discover what lies beneath. And when you speak from that place of deep understanding, your message has impact. Because you are no longer speaking to their mind, you are speaking to their heart. Even with difficult people, genuine interest breaks down walls. Those who seem inaccessible, cold, or defensive often have learned to protect themselves because they have been hurt before. But when someone approaches without judgment, with the sincere intention to understand, something begins to change. Maybe they won't open up immediately, but little by little, they let down their guard. Because they feel you are not there to attack, but to understand. And in a world full of masks, that feels like a refuge. Difficult people don't need more confrontation. They need more understanding. And when you are the one who gives it to them, your influence becomes undeniable. Developing charisma is not about empty techniques. It is not about smiling more or using certain body language tricks. Real charisma comes from human interest. Charismatic people are not necessarily the most eloquent, but the ones who make others feel good in their presence. That happens when you make someone feel important, listened to, and seen. Authentic charisma doesn't shout, "Look at me." It whispers, "I see you." And that is far more powerful. Because when someone feels valued by you, they automatically begin to value you. That emotional reciprocity is the foundation of every deep connection. In a world where everything moves fast and attention is a scarce resource, taking a genuine interest in others is an act of both rebellion and humanity. It is looking beyond the immediate, listening beyond the words, understanding beyond the differences. And when you do this, you don't just influence, you transform. You transform conversations, relationships, environments, and, above all, the way others perceive you. Because those who sincerely care become unforgettable, not for what they said, but for how they made others feel. And that is what makes the difference between being heard and being followed, between being accepted and being respected, between being remembered and being admired. Those who master this principle don't just gain friends, they gain allies, admirers, and open doors where there were once only walls. And that is the true power of influence. Part 9. If you make a mistake, admit it quickly and strongly. Making mistakes is an inevitable part of the human experience. We all make them. However, what truly defines our influence, credibility, and ability to connect with others is not the mistake itself, but how we respond to it. People respect honesty. When someone admits a mistake quickly and without excuses, what they project is not weakness but inner strength. Because it takes courage to acknowledge that you were wrong, especially when expectations or your reputation are on the line. In contrast, when we try to hide or justify our failures, what we convey is insecurity, fear, and a lack of integrity that will eventually erode trust. Admitting a mistake quickly and sincerely emotionally disarms people. It is a silent persuasion technique that works with great effectiveness. Think about this. When someone is prepared to argue with you and instead of defending yourself you say something like, "You're right, I was wrong and I take full responsibility," the tension dissolves. What could have been a conflict turns into an opportunity for mutual respect. People are accustomed to defensiveness, pride, and denial. When you do the opposite, you stand out. You are perceived as authentic, mature, and highly self-aware. And that perception makes you trustworthy. Someone people can follow, listen to, and support. Real-life cases prove this time and time again. Leaders, entrepreneurs, And public figures who have made mistakes and recovered did so not by covering them up, but by facing them with courage. A powerful example is that of a former CEO of a major tech company who, after a catastrophic product launch failure, publicly stated, "It was a bad decision. I made it. And I will personally lead the correction process." Not only did he keep his job, but he earned more respect than he had before. Because what people value is responsibility. No one expects perfection. What they expect is consistency and transparency. When those two are present, trust is rebuilt quickly. Admitting mistakes also humanizes you. It makes you approachable. It makes you real. In a world where many pretend to always be right, never fail, and never show vulnerability, showing your humanity connects you with others on a much deeper level. It's a way of saying, "I'm human too, but I'm committed to improving." That attitude generates empathy. And empathy is fertile ground for strong and lasting relationships. In professional settings, for example, when a leader admits a mistake, their team doesn't see them as incompetent, but as someone with integrity, someone with whom they can work honestly and directly. In personal relationships, admitting your mistake allows the other person to lower their defenses and open up to conversation again. But it's not just about saying, "I was wrong." How you do it matters. It must be quick, clear, and free of excuses. The longer you wait, the more it seems like you were forced to admit it. The more you embellish your apology, the more it sounds manipulative. The key is to be direct. "I made a mistake. I acknowledge it. And I want to correct it." That simplicity communicates an inner security that inspires. It also transforms the mistake into a connection tool. Because you're not just recognizing the error, you're inviting solutions and shared learning. You're saying, "I don't just recognize it, I'm also willing to improve." And in people's minds, that equals genuine leadership. There's another profound benefit to admitting mistakes. It frees you. The burden of justifying yourself, carrying guilt silently, or fearing you'll be exposed disappears. You're no longer acting from a defensive posture but from truth. And truth allows you to move with lightness, clarity, and focus. When you stop wasting energy maintaining a perfect image, you can invest that energy in building authentic relationships, delivering real value, and continuing to grow. Because admitting a mistake doesn't halt your path, it clears it. It allows you to move forward without unnecessary baggage, with greater awareness and a broader perspective on reality. There is also a deep impact on how you perceive yourself. Every time you admit a mistake and face its consequences with integrity, you strengthen your self-esteem. Yes, your self-esteem. Because there's no greater sense of personal security than knowing you can make mistakes and still remain valuable. You're no longer trapped in the need to appear perfect. You are on the path of becoming better each day. That's a huge difference. Perfection creates pressure. Continuous improvement creates peace. And that peace reflects in your language, your presence, and how you relate to others. People feel good around those who don't hide their mistakes but turn them into lessons. Remember this. Every mistake is a disguised opportunity. An opportunity to show your character, to grow, to strengthen relationships. When you face them with honesty, speed, and humility, you not only maintain your credibility, you elevate it. And over time, that becomes a powerful advantage. Because while others waste time and energy avoiding judgment or hiding their mistakes, you move forward with the freedom of someone who already understands that lasting respect is earned with truth, not perfection. That's why the next time you make a mistake, and you will because we all do, remember, admitting it quickly and strongly may be the smartest thing you do. Not to save yourself, but to grow. Not to protect your image, but to increase your influence. Part 10. Lead without imposing. Indirect influence with tact. Authentic leadership is not enforced with shouting or harsh commands, but is built with tact, emotional wisdom, and a deep understanding of human nature. People don't want to feel forced, they want to feel inspired. One of the most powerful keys to influencing without imposing is learning to guide in a way that does not make others feel controlled. This is where indirect influence comes into play. The subtle ability great leaders have to awaken in others the genuine desire to collaborate. It's not about manipulation, but about deep understanding. When someone feels they have made a decision on their own, freely, their commitment becomes stronger, longer lasting, and more authentic. There are methods to achieve this that work with almost mathematical precision. One of them is sincere appreciation. When you acknowledge someone's strengths and let them know without exaggeration or hidden intentions, you are planting a seed of openness. That person becomes more receptive, more willing to listen to your ideas, and more likely to consider your proposals. Another principle is making ideas seem like they are theirs. Instead of saying, "Do this," you can present the situation as a challenge, an opportunity for growth, or simply as a question, "What do you think if we try this approach?" That simple question transforms an instruction into an invitation. And when a person feels they reach that conclusion on their own, their involvement is complete. The power of questions instead of orders is an essential tool. Questions open doors, stimulate thought, and activate the desire to participate. Orders, on the other hand, close possibilities and generate resistance, especially when egos are involved. A good leader asks, "How do you think we could improve this?" instead of dictating, "Change this now." The result is that the other person feels valued, feels that their opinion matters, and therefore commits more strongly to the solution. Additionally, when a leader takes the time to understand the desires, fears, and aspirations of their team or environment, they begin to see human behavior as a map that can be read. Decisions are not made in a vacuum. They are influenced by how someone feels at that moment. If you create an environment where people feel respected, heard, and valued, you are setting the perfect stage for them to want to cooperate with you. Not out of obligation but out of conviction. Furthermore, when you treat someone as though they are already capable, responsible, and competent, they often rise to meet that vision. There are countless practical cases illustrating the power of subtle leadership. For example, a manager who wants their team to adopt a new work methodology doesn't start by imposing it, but by asking what challenges they currently face and what improvements they would like to see. Then, they suggest the new methodology as a solution to what the team themselves expressed. In this way, the change doesn't feel like an external imposition but like a natural evolution driven by the team itself. Another example is a parent who wants their child to study more. Instead of scolding or imposing strict schedules, they can ask about the child's dreams and future goals, then connect studying with those dreams. In doing so, the child sees studying not as a burden but as a bridge to what they want. Guiding with tact also means knowing when to speak and when to remain silent. There are moments when silence is more persuasive than 1,000 words. Sometimes, simply leaving space for the other person to reflect allows them to reach conclusions on their own. A leader who masters the art of keeping silent at the right moment demonstrates self-control, maturity, and wisdom. It also shows respect because it allows others to think and take part in building the path forward. Another effective strategy is offering options. When you give alternatives, you give power. Instead of saying, "This is what you have to do," you can say, "We can approach this in two ways. One is this, and another is that. Which one do you prefer?" This kind of approach not only improves receptiveness but also encourages autonomy, and people who feel free are more creative, more productive, and more committed. Finally, never underestimate the power of example. The most powerful influence is not what you say but what you embody. If you act with responsibility, respect, dedication, and openness, you inspire more than any speech ever could. The consistency between what you say and what you do generates a silent authority. One that doesn't need to impose because it is naturally respected. People follow leaders they admire, not leaders they fear. In a world full of noise, leading with tact and elegance is more valuable than ever. Those who master this skill become a source of inspiration, someone whose presence transforms effortlessly, whose voice guides without shouting, and whose influence endures beyond words. Part 11. Make the other person feel the idea was theirs. When a person feels that an idea belongs to them, their level of commitment to that idea increases dramatically. This is one of the most powerful and least used psychological truths in everyday and professional life. Many try to convince others by imposing ideas, pushing arguments, or using pressure. But true influence does not come from imposing, it comes from inspiring. When we plant an idea subtly, when we guide someone to reach a conclusion on their own, their sense of emotional ownership is activated. At that moment, what was once just a suggestion becomes a personal conviction. The key lies in mastering the art of indirect suggestion rather than direct imposition. This requires patience, observation, and deep listening. If you want someone to adopt an idea, Start by asking questions instead of giving orders. Instead of saying, "You should do this," you might say, "What do you think if we try this alternative?" Or even, "How do you think we could improve this situation?" When you involve the other person in the creative process, you make the outcome feel like their own. This not only strengthens commitment, but also reduces the natural resistance that arises under external pressure. People tend to resist when they feel manipulated or controlled, but they open up when they feel actively involved. Participation generates ownership, and ownership generates voluntary action. This is the psychology of commitment without pressure. It's not about pushing, but about guiding with emotional intelligence. Furthermore, when you get the other person to see a personal benefit in the proposal, the effect multiplies. The human mind responds enthusiastically when it perceives an emotional, social, or practical gain. That is why, when presenting an idea, you should do so from the angle that matters to the other person. Not from your logic, but from their desires, interests, and values. This requires empathy, but also strategy. Not every idea needs to be fully exposed from the start. Sometimes it's better to leave empty spaces for the other person to fill. That active participation creates a powerful illusion, the illusion of having arrived at the idea independently. And this illusion is not a trick. It's a bridge toward real cooperation. Great leaders, negotiators, and communicators deeply understand this. They know the human ego needs to feel useful, valued, and autonomous. So instead of competing with that ego, they intelligently feed it. Instead of seeking to be the protagonist, they become catalysts. They ask more than they state. They listen more than they talk. And when they do speak, they do so with the intent to spark ideas, not to impose them. This subtlety changes the entire game. Because when you make the other person feel the idea was theirs, you don't need to motivate them. They are already motivated from within. You don't need to convince them. They are already convinced. You don't need to push them. They already want to move forward. In work environments, this translates to leaders who empower their teams rather than control them. In sales, it means salespeople who ask more than they pitch. In personal relationships, it means partners who build agreements together instead of imposing decisions. This principle has endless practical applications. In negotiations, in education, in leadership, even in parenting. When a child believes they chose to eat healthy, they will do it willingly. When an employee feels they participated in finding a solution, they will implement it with energy. And when a couple feels the decision was mutual, their bond strengthens. The secret lies in transforming your communication into a space of co-creation. Use language as a tool to open doors in the other person's mind, not to push them open. Plant with intention, let the ideas grow naturally. Ask questions that invite reflection, not statements that trigger defensiveness. Real commitment is not imposed, it is inspired. And inspiration arises when we allow the other person to shine, when we let them feel that they have reached the conclusion themselves. This is not giving up power, it is multiplying it. Because when you make the other person feel like the author of the idea, they also feel responsible for carrying it out. That is the essence of authentic persuasion, not convincing, but awakening the genuine desire to act. Part 12. Close with Impact. Create relationships that last. A powerful relationship is not defined by how it begins, but by how it is sustained over time. The most influential and valuable connections are not the ones that burn intensely for a moment and then fade away, but the ones nurtured with intention, authenticity, and consistency. At this stage, you have already learned how to create impact, speak with emotional intelligence, listen actively, and lead with respect. Now it is time to take all of that to another level. To become truly unforgettable, someone who not only influences in the present moment but leaves a lasting mark. The key to achieving this lies in how you close each interaction and how you keep the connection alive without appearing as if you are only seeking personal gain. The closing is more than just a farewell. It is an opportunity to strengthen emotional memory. People remember how you made them feel, not just what you said. That is why every encounter should end with a note of gratitude, recognition, or genuine appreciation. Thank them for their time, value their contribution, make them feel their presence was meaningful. These emotional closings anchor a positive feeling in the other person's mind, generating future openness, prolonged trust, and deeper connection. Grand gestures are unnecessary. A sincere phrase, a kind gesture, a look that communicates attention is enough. Small things, when genuine, have transformative power. Maintaining a connection does not require being present all the time, but knowing when to show up at key moments. An unforgettable person is not someone who constantly demands attention, but someone who knows how to reappear with value. You can do this by remembering important dates, sharing useful resources, or simply sending a message that says, "I thought of you when I saw this." These small actions demonstrate that the connection is authentic, not transactional. If you only show up when you need something, the other person will sense it. But if your presence is consistent and your interest genuine, then the connection turns into lasting trust. The goal is to be there without invading, to offer without expecting, to connect without forcing. A key strategy for cultivating long-term relationships is focusing on providing value continuously. Ask yourself, what can I offer this person without asking for anything in return? It can be information, emotional support, a valuable introduction, or simply quality time. This attitude of selfless service is magnetic. In a world where many only look to receive, those who give stand out. And when you give without expecting anything, surprisingly, everything begins to return. People trust those who do not pressure them. They value those who respect them. And they open up more to those without a hidden agenda. Becoming that kind of person positions you as a key figure in any social, professional, or personal network. But the true power of a long-term connection is not only in external acts, but in internal consistency. Your reputation is the echo of your actions. If you say you will help, do it. If you make a promise, keep it. If you commit, show up. That congruence is the foundation of every strong relationship. You don't need to be perfect, but you do need to be honest. Because when people know they can trust your word, they not only respect your presence, they want you around. Trust is the most valuable currency in the bank of human relationships, and it is built with small daily deposits of integrity, authenticity, and respect. Becoming an unforgettable person also means seeing people deeply. Not just hearing what they say, but understanding what they do not say. Perceiving their needs, fears, and dreams. Acting from that understanding with sensitivity. People do not forget those who truly saw them, who accepted them without judgment, who encouraged them when they doubted themselves. When you are a source of inspiration, support, and clarity for someone, you become a reference point. Not because of what you know, but because of how you made them feel about themselves. That is what leaves a mark. That is what makes the difference. Dale Carnegie's legacy is precisely that. He helped millions understand that success is not about manipulating, but about connecting. Not about impressing, but about influencing through respect. His principles never go out of style because they appeal to the core of human nature. The desire to be heard, valued, and understood. And now, that legacy lives in you. If you have made it this far, you are no longer the same person who started. You now have tools, skills, and awareness that many do not. And with that comes a responsibility. To use this power to build, not to control, to uplift, not to dominate. Your new transformative skill is this. Knowing how to create relationships that transcend immediate interest, that are nurtured with empathy, that grow with trust, and that endure with authenticity. Relationships not based on what you can get, but on what you can give. Because, in the end, true success is not measured by how many people you know, but by how many remember you with gratitude. Not by how many contacts you have, but by how many connections you have cultivated. And not by what you achieved alone, but by what you helped others achieve with you. That is how you close with impact. Not with a grand speech, but with consistent action. Not with a loud farewell, but with a presence that remains in the mind and heart. That is the essence of the art of influence. That is the power of human relationships when lived with purpose. And that, now, is your new path. So, if this audiobook inspired you and you're ready to keep deepening your personal growth and inner transformation, I invite you to discover another eye-opening audiobook that will change the way you see the world, your decisions, and your potential. Click, and I'll see you there.